Welcome back to What's New with Mead. We are in episode 57, and I am super excited to chat with the winning couple from Mead Stampede of 2023, among other amazing accolades that they've already achieved this year. We have Nathan and Karysa here to chat all about their experience in their honestly limited time, but all of their awesome successes too. So Karysa, Nathan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us, man.
Thank you.
Hey, so let's go ahead and start with people need to get to know you. That's my favorite part about this podcast is like hearing a little bit of a story about where you started and why you started in the first place. So how'd this all start?
Yeah.
I'll let you lead.
All right. Well, I think it was back in late 2019.
2018.
It was 4 or 5 years ago. Time is all blur these days. But right around the beginning of COVID, we had started getting interested in making mead, and I stumbled across your channel, Man-Made Mead, and BC's channel doing the most, and a handful of others, but I really gravitated towards your guys' channels. And Chris and I both watched a bunch of videos, and we just thought, hey, let's make some mead, put some money down and give a go. And our first few meads actually turned out really well. Some of them, I'd say within the first 10, we had a few duds for sure, but it went pretty well. So we kept watching videos and trying to refine the process and get better at it. And so now here we are, like 4 or 5 years later, still making mead.
Well, you say some of your first ones were duds, but you also, I think your very first one, which was the Mead Stampede winner, Best of Show of 2021. That's a pretty big deal for your first mead ever, just to like go for it. So
beginner's luck, man. Beginner's luck.
I don't know. I never saw that beginner's luck. So you guys obviously have good palates. That's part of this process too, is like, I think you guys have I don't know this for sure. I'm assuming based off of experiences in cooking or just drink making or stuff like that, you've developed a very good palate to say like what goes well together. And then just, as you said, consuming content can help you see like for a lot of people, what's also not going well or what's going well. So I think it's fun that you guys started with my channel and BC's channel, because it's just very cool, very wild to see that. And I'm not going to take any credit for the success you've had, because I think you guys just like, you saw the inspiration. You're like, I'm just going to go knock it out of the park.
Dude, I mean, you may not want to take credit, but like we definitely owe a lot of our mead making success, big and small, to you guys and the content that you and the whole mead community puts out. I mean, we started right after you started, basically within the first 6 months of your video making. And so, yeah, a lot of what we know now was because of you guys. So, huge thank you for putting all this stuff out there. And I mean, we wouldn't be anywhere right now without the stuff that you guys make. So,
well, and watching you guys discuss, some of the flaws or missteps you had back then opened our eyes to, okay, it's not just us. There's other people having similar issues. Here's how they fixed it. Here's maybe how we can correct things too.
mm-hmm.
And so it was helpful seeing somebody else grow alongside us, even though we weren't in communication with you. Right.
Well, I hope that's true of my channel. It's fun to like put out recipes, but there is a lot of failure. And as weird as it sounds, I do enjoy publishing those failures sometimes, because I think there are learning experiences, at least for me. And then I want somebody to know that like, oh yeah, you don't dump 10 gallons of pumpkin puree in this thing, because that's not going to go well, or whatever the experience is. So
right. Yeah.
Let's talk about your recipes, like the palate side of things. When you are thinking about what kind of mead you want to make, do you normally start with, is there like a hierarchy of like, well, we want to make a apricot mead. Now, what else might go with apricot? Or do you guys have a certain flow chart, so to speak, for your process? Or is it just kind of
we've looked up maybe what goes well with some maybe fruits or you know, floral flavors, but most of the time though, it's kind of just going based off of what foods and desserts we've tried that we've really liked, and trying to think of ways to create those same tastes and feels within our mouths.
Mhm.
But I think most of it is just like, you know, like we did a mango habanero, and it's like we love spicy, and habanero is my absolute favorite
Like
pepper.
the last video.
Yeah. And so it's like what goes really well with the habanero, and it's like it obviously it's mango. Like,
Yeah. But I think as far as kind of like you were saying, we don't ever really set out to like, well, I guess we do kind of set out to do different things. We just like to try different things.
Yeah.
I don't think we've recreated any meads exactly like we're always tinkering. I don't think we found any recipe, maybe one or two, like the Skeeter Pea one's pretty solid, but
oh yeah.
most of them we're always trying to like refine or twist a little bit. But as far as like the flow of things, usually it's just we go to the local farmers market here in the summer and fall and stuff and try to find the most fresh fruit that we can, or ciders, or they have a pear juice or a pear cider that we try to get. So just really sourcing quality ingredients. That's usually like what's available, you know. We haven't got to the point yet where we're like, you know, seeking super exotic honeys or anything like that. I love watching your videos for that reason, but we haven't really traveled too far outside of, you know, what our small town produces. But yeah, so it's good ingredients first and then move on from there.
I do love that though. You know, you mentioned you're not really going with all these different kinds of honeys, and it's really fun, like to just buy a bunch of honey off the internet and be like, well, this is from Hawaii and this is from Switzerland and this is from wherever. But then you guys are also doing so well with your local honey, which one of those honeys I've always kind of coveted, not gonna lie, is that the black locust honey. Is the last time I worked with it was when you sent me some, and I was recreating that Mead Stampede mead from 2021. And I thought it was such a fun honey. And the fact that y'all have it just like, so to speak, flowing, you know, around there is just super cool.
Yeah. I need to actually, I was thinking about that today earlier. I was like, I need to get a hold of the guy and get another 5 gallons of that because he doesn't always have it. It's not flowing as much as you might think. It's
seasonal.
Yeah, it's he knows it's special, so I gotta get hold of it.
Especially after we won and told him.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, really?
Charge more now.
It's like, oh, it went up $100. Oh, okay, sorry.
But yeah, I think as far as like ingredients go, you know, UMBC and a number of people, they're one of the top 5 advice instructions that I've heard over the years is, you know, quality ingredients is crucial. So I kind of took that to heart, and we try to not buy too much from the grocery store unless there's a specific thing that we're doing, like maybe a first test batch of, like, I think we were going to do a watermelon mead, and they had like simply watermelon juice. So we were going to try that, but as opposed to like juicing a watermelon ourselves. But
when you start that project, let me know how it goes, because I've heard very mixed results with watermelon. So I'll be curious to see your findings. You know, what happens.
Didn't you try that one time?
BC has done it. He tried to ferment in a watermelon. He basically just punched a hole in it and then, you know, made it juice, and then it did not taste very good. It was not watermelon-y at all.
I remember watching that video.
Yeah, I do remember.
But yeah, I'll keep you posted if I do it.
Well, so fresh ingredients, and you know, the best ingredients too is, I think, is important, and it does sometimes limit you unless you live somewhere that has a ton of varieties of fruit or options for things, to like a couple little avenues or you know, specific fruit categories. Like for me, I can get some peaches around here and I can get some pears and apples, but like outside of that, like I'm not really rolling in options. So for you guys, what are some of those common fruits that you have in your area?
So we got apples, pears. We get those from the farmers market. Peaches from the farmers market. Those are the main three, and we do quite a few.
There's a lot of strawberry and
Strawberry. Yeah, we got.
yeah.
But my dad, I planted a bunch of well, not a bunch, but like four grapes out at my dad's, like probably
Years
10,
ago.
10, 12 years ago. And we actually made it was what do they call that honey? The buckwheat honey. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm brain farting. There's some foreshadowing. Um, yeah, so we made a buckwheat pie mint with some of the grapes that I grew, and we tried it the other day, and we're like, holy crap, this actually turned out way better than we thought it would. Because at first
It held up.
it mellowed a lot more.
Yeah.
So yeah, grapes. What other fruit? I just planted some rhubarb this year.
Yeah. There's
Um,
there's so much that I kind of forget about too.
yeah, we honestly, I don't think we made a new batch of mead for at least probably 6 months.
Yeah, just
We've been busy, so
house
it's
renovations and everything. It's been
Yeah.
difficult to find space.
but as far I know Ohio has a bunch of pawpaw fruit. I've always wanted to try doing something with that.
I've heard about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
Well,
it's probably
so
similar.
so are you, yeah, that sounds like a lot of the same stuff that's around here. We don't really have, we have sand plums. That's the one that Oklahoma has that's like this weird, you see them on the side of the road here and they're really tart. BC made a brew with them and it is like the most tart fruit you might think of. And it's just interesting. So we have that here in Oklahoma. That's kind of
Is it
native
like
to us.
is it like an actual plum or is it like
Yeah, it looks really small. It's like the size of a grape, like maybe a little bit bigger.
Okay.
I honestly don't know where to get them. And in fact, they're like, they have sand plum trees. And then I guess you have to know where they are to go pick them up. And so that's how BC did it. He like knew a guy and then went and said, hey, can I pick your tree? And so I basically got a bunch of them for free. Because I don't know that they're coveted by people because they're kind of a weird fruit. And so
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. Well, are you you talked about all these different fruits and you also talked about planting some things. Are you guys trying to at this point make a bunch of new different kinds of meads, or are you mostly in a refining process when it comes to your mead making?
Like I said, it's been about probably 6 months since we started a new batch, but we're always trying to, every time we do it, we'll usually try to refine something we've already done and then experiment with something new. So I know we've got coffee mead on the way, a juniper mead. What else? I'd have to like consult the spreadsheet.
Yeah, we have so many.
Yeah.
I mean, really, there's a lot of carboys in there that we're just letting sit for right now.
We started a dandelion. I think I just bleeped.
Dandelion, yeah.
We started a dandelion mead, and I got a story about that one. So, yeah, well, it's actually two dandelion meads. I spent and I tallied when I started picking the dandelions and pulling the petals out individually. I realized before I started, like, this is going to take a while. So I kept track of all the time I spent doing it, and I added it all up at the end. I spent 36 hours and 15 minutes plucking dandelions, and I've got probably enough Ziploc frozen bags worth of dandelion petals to do like 5 or 6 more batches.
Wow. Like 5-gallon batches worth?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Our yard looked great.
I've only done it once and it was very easy because the guy who sent me the dandelion petals, he had degreened about 4 ounces of them. And then he did 4 ounces of not degreened. And I definitely used the degreened ones. I have not taken the time to, that just seems, it's a lot of work and it's good. It's really good, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah, for sure. So I did 2 batches. I did one with just the dandelions, the petals, in primary using cold water, and then a different 5-gallon batch using the dandelion petals. But I made a tea first with the petals and then let it cool down and started. But they're both within, a few days of each other, just to
Interesting.
kind of see if anything changes in the primary with that. And then after
So
that, 5-gallon A and B, we plan on splitting them into 1 gallons and trying different back sweetening levels.
that was one fun thing when I was asking you about some stuff. You said you guys do that pretty often. You'll take especially when developing a recipe, you'll take your 5 gallons and you'll split it out, and then you'll do your different samples or your different testing with that. And I feel like more people need to do that, even though it might take a little more time. Because you guys are able to refine recipes more to figure out how much to truly add to that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that some of these award-winning recipes that you guys have created at this point probably went through a little bit of a vetting process. I'm assuming, at least.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of taste tests.
Yeah.
With not just us, but a lot of friends get involved in it too. So we kind of geek out on the A/B testing of different things and getting multiple friends and family involved. People that give us honest feedback, and then try to take all that input, and then if we do the recipe again, tweak it a little bit. And like you said, it's a lengthy process, but it's fun and it's kind of nice because it's a lot of work and then a lot of waiting, so you can get a lot of other stuff done while that's doing its thing.
Yeah,
it's always fun to turn around too and bottle what we have left of A, B, C, and see how they age too, because we may liked B better when we first bottled, but then all of a sudden C is like a year old and it's amazing and it's probably the best. So it's really cool kind of seeing how those tastes change and how your preferences change within that time.
Well, and mead is so difficult because we add so many spices and so many different flavors in, and they all react differently. Like you're saying, something, your cardamom you throw in there at 6 months might be the perfect level, but then all of a sudden, a year, it's like, what the heck? It's like way stronger. What happened? So really having that time to like set back and see what happens. There's not a great spreadsheet or any information out there that says, watch out for cinnamon, it gets stronger, or cardamom this is like how it works. I wish there was. That would save me a lot of time and heartache, honestly.
Maybe that's your cross to bear. You got to make the book on that.
Oh man, that'd be a 20 year project at this point.
I know.
There's too many spices.
Yeah.
And then too many variables, unfortunately, because then you get into like, well, now I'm using this kind of honey that has a little bit of that already in it. And so now that this is expounded upon, and it just becomes
that's part of the fun of it though. It's like you're always kind of chasing that perfect thing. Like you get close sometimes and other times it's like way different. You did almost everything the same, but it's not the same as the prior batch or whatever. So it's kind of always an experiment. It's like cooking, you can
right.
I'm not to the point now I don't really follow recipes too much. I just kind of throw things in willy-nilly and
see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
So you talked a little bit about trying to, not doing as much repeating recipes at this point. Do you guys have anything at your house that is like a standard, like, your friends have known to love this thing, and so you feel like you always have to have it on tap?
Probably the Skeeter Pea, which we're out of. The kiwi.
Oh,
the
kiwi
mead. We need to do another one of that one soon. And then we'll probably end up doing another pecan pie, because that one's going over pretty well.
Yeah.
But
there's also one raspberry muffin that people kind of geek out on.
Yeah.
So
raspberry muffin. Interesting.
Yeah.
I got very much into like the breadier type of desserts. So I was really into muffins and pies, and like I really wanted to do a I don't know how I would do this, a brownie mead, but
Oh,
but
Chocolate and graham crackers.
yeah,
Maybe.
but I just was really into the bready stuff for a while, so
Yeah.
we
Man.
did a lot of bready things with graham crackers.
I wish I had known that. I would have sent you and what I sent you guys. I have a banana cream pie mead that used a bunch of graham crackers and stuff. That would have been fun. It's it would have been cool to had I known that, but maybe I'll
Dude,
send you another box.
You already sent us way too like
Okay.
thank
Send
you
us
so
a
much
lot.
for those, man.
Thank you.
I plan
Happy
on
to share.
saving them. Yeah, I plan on saving a few of them for when we get together with our friends, so I can be like, this is my twin. He sent me
And well, I enjoy getting to share that stuff like you guys do. You know, you just said sharing with friends is the most fun part. I feel like of mead making. Obviously, there's nothing better than winning an award or like hearing that kind of thing. But then knowing that you've like given your friends something that is a unique experience, and it sounds like you guys are making some really unique stuff too. I've never had a kiwi mead before that has been real. You know, I've used some very silly forms of kiwi in the past, but stuff like that is like you're never really going to get, especially on a commercial level. You know, sometimes there are just things that people don't make, and so
right.
us as homebrewers, we get to be a little more experimental with our processes and things.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, for me, I think the best feeling of it is when friends have told us like, "Oh, we've had mead before, but we never liked it," and then
Mm-hmm.
this is good, you know. So winning people over to the mead side of things, I think, is probably more rewarding than winning anything, at least in my mind. But yeah, I think like you mentioned with kiwi and this, we're able to do things on a smaller scale. It's not going to like that you don't have to take out a freaking bank loan to make. Um, but yeah, like obviously with the kiwi one, we did not travel to any tropical destination to pick those up. We just went to the supermarket, but yeah.
Hey, I mean, it's still that's a more unique way to do it than I did. My experience was what did I buy? It was a strawberry and kiwi like juice, and I was just trying to that I was doing it for a video, and I just bought that juice just trying to get something that sugar with it. So it wasn't like real kiwi. So you know that's my experience with it, and I know it's a little bit different to work with, but it seems kind of fun.
Yeah, I think what we did was we took all the skin layer off, peeled it, froze it, thawed it, blended it, and then I'd have to look at what exactly we did, but we either put it in primary or secondary or both. I can't remember. Just as a pulp, basically. We didn't. We don't use a whole lot of bags. I've done it before, and I don't know. It just seems like a hassle. I mean, it's gonna be a hassle either way, you know.
Right.
But yeah, we don't use a whole lot of it.
I used to try and do more with bags, but I've just gotten kind of lazy at this point. I'm just like, just throw it in. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll deal with it later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually what we do is like we'll have that layer of sediment on the bottom from all the fruit or whatever's in there, and we'll usually once we've bottled everything or racked it off that we'll take the bag, then dump the carboy in the bag, and then just squeeze out all the remaining liquid from that sediment, and it's pretty good. Like it's a little more tannic, and like there's definitely a different heavier mouthfeel to it, but
yeah,
still get something out of it.
I want to ask you a little bit about peaches. And again, I'm not asking for all the trade secrets, but I am about to invest some money into a big peach mead to buy a ton of fruit and going for it. My main question is, do you de-skin your peaches before you put them in?
Yes.
And how do you best do that without having to sit there and spend 36 hours like your dandelion experience?
We've done, I don't recommend that. I think we've done at least 3 or 4 different peach ones. The first one we did, I think we blanched them or whatever, like boiled them quickly, and then it just slid off.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think what I used was just like a potato peeler, and then did it while they were cold. I felt like they were easier to work with that way because when you boil them, they just kind of get mushy and
they get mushy, they get hot. and there tends to be burned fingers.
Yeah.
And it just leaves more of a mess. And there was quite a few we dropped on the floor, so we just had to put them in compost.
So yeah, I think ever since that first time that we boiled them to take the skin off, I've just been going with a potato peeler and then cut them up, freeze them. That's usually our method.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I heard about the blanching side too, and I always wondered when I do my apple cinnamon recipe, I buy supermarket apples. I don't always go to the best apple sources, honestly. But I'll just go ahead and I'll have to boil them for like 12 to 15 seconds because there's that layer of edible wax that you have to watch out for, which I'm sure is on other fruit too. But I've same experience. I burned some fingers. Those apples get pretty hot in about 10 seconds. They're trying to grab them real fast. So it's not a fun bobbing for apples experience, but it definitely helps to get rid of that weird flavor that you get from it sometimes.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we've done with skin on it was strawberries, but I mean, do you even classify this?
Right.
I don't know what you do. You can't de-seed them very well. You can't de-skin them. That's feels kind of like if someone said to me, I de-seeded all my strawberries before using them, I'd be like, that's a little bit psychopathic behavior. Not gonna lie. That's too intense.
Yeah. That's a level of OCD that even I can't comprehend.
Yeah. So you, again, not asking for the exact recipes or anything like that, but one thing we're going to talk about the peach pie.
Pecan pie.
Pecan pie. Gosh, sorry. Pecan pie mead. I find this one interesting because pecans are really tough to deal with. Any nut itself is hard to deal with. So I kind of want to dive a little bit into that. You have to get rid of the oil somehow, or you just do the thing where you let it set and you let that oily slick go on top and then you rack below it. Did you guys find a way to avoid the oil slick, or did you end up roasting them? Is this a trade secret that I'm diving into?
I'll let her start, and if she starts divulging too much information, I'll kick her under the table here.
He's just asking about the concept.
I know, but tell him how we came up with the idea. He might want to know.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll tell you the background story. Basically, we every year as a Christmas gift to my parents, we have them kind of think of what they want to do for a mead, and then we kind of just do it together. They'll be there when we start it, and then they'll kind of come over and help rack it and stuff. But this particular year that we did this, I can't remember what year it was.
They all blur together.
They do. We asked them, what do you want to do this year? What's the flavor you want to do? And they couldn't think of anything. And I was like, well, what about a dessert? Do you want a dessert? And finally, my dad was like, I just love at Christmas time pecan pies. They're my favorite pie. It would be really cool to do something that tasted like that. And so we immediately just geeked out and thought it was an amazing idea. So I went in and started trying to do some research of if anyone's done a pecan mead or a pecan pie mead, how they did it. Collected what I could. There wasn't much, but I collected what I could and came back.
You also looked at like actual pecan pie recipes.
Oh yeah, I did look at actual pecan.
Yeah.
Like I went back and looked at the alcoholic recipe that deals with rum, but I also looked at the non-alcoholic kind and just went way back and Betty Crocker and all these different recipes, and came back to him with kind of a base idea, and then of course he went in and kind of tweaked a few things, and we kind of discussed maybe how we could improve it even more. But we did end up, I don't know, do you want to share what we ended up doing with the pecans?
Sure, yeah. Yeah. So like you said, there was a lot of kind of back and forth between like, oh, what if we did this or did this much of this or went about it this way. There's a lot of discussion. And really, this was like our first attempt at it, which is really crazy to me to think about. So yeah, the ingredients that we used were the black locust honey, roasted pecans, rum, vanilla, cinnamon, and graham crackers.
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else.
And the rum in particular took us a while to settle on, and we ended up talking to
we have some good friends at the local liquor mart or whatever.
Yeah.
Shout out Wine Rack.
We also talked to people at the rum room.
And so we don't know a whole lot about rum, so we discussed it with some close friends, and they kind of steered us towards this one, and so we use that. But yeah, as far as like your question about the oils, so yeah, we roasted them and then soaked them in the rum for a while, and then after that I think we put them in secondary, and then put all that in secondary, and then we didn't use a bag, which, man, that sucked because it just became this like disgusting coagulated
it was gross.
It never settled out. It never
Interesting.
settled out for a long time, and I was like, man, I hope this is still good. So we racked it. I think maybe it was I'd have to look at the recipe, but it might be like a year later.
Yeah.
That we racked it with their parents again, and it took for flipping ever to rack this thing because it kept getting clogged up. And we used we put the hose in the bag and then put that down in there to try to like filter it. It took probably like 2 hours to rack this 6 gallon into a 5 gallon.
Jeez.
Her muscles were so sore and like we were so tight just trying to hold it in place. And
we took shifts, but so yeah, the oil kind of, I honestly can't remember.
So much oil.
After we were able to rack it, I think we might have racked it twice after that.
I think so.
But
there really wasn't much oil in the mead. I think the roasting took care of it.
I think that helped, and having the rum
that
helped it somehow. I mean, I haven't really done a whole lot of research because we've only used nuts like one other time.
I think so.
We used peanuts, and that was pain for sure.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I only have one experience with really nuts as well, but it was my attempt at pecan a long time ago. I tried to make a maple praline mead, and I was inspired because I had this amaretti flavoring, and I was like, well, I think I can do this naturally. And so then I went and bought a bunch of pecans and like threw maple syrup in, and I tried to toast them, but I didn't quite roast or toast them well enough. And so I ended up having there was some very clear oily taste and stuff in there. So that was my only experience there. And then I was like, nah, I'm good. But since trying that mead that you guys have created, I feel inspired again to now go back and like, let's see what I can do. Let's see if I can figure out some sort of way to like make this work and maybe be less lazy about trying to do it than I was last time.
Right on. Well, actually, that kind of brings up an idea that I might have had if you're interested, because we're going to send you out a care package probably after the heat dies down a little bit. It's supposed to be like freaking 100 plus here in the next couple days. So, but we're going to send you something. If you're interested, we could send you a bottle of that pecan, and then for like a future video, if you want to down the road, you could make your version of it, save that bottle, and then we'll make another version of that one. So we'll have an aged one, a new one of ours, and your version of it. And,
I'm all for that.
Maybe do a taste.
That's one of those where I was like, of course, my mind. I want to try to make the thing that you guys have done, because that's like, it's just inspirational. And so I'm all about trying that. Keyword trying, because I don't know if I'm going to get anywhere close to where you guys have nailed.
It's a lot of work, man. I mean, like I said, usually we're at the point now where like if we're gonna do something, we want to do it all full tilt boogie, like make it right the first time,
Right.
we don't want to have to keep recreating the wheel. So it was a bit of a gamble. I mean, it was a pretty expensive one to make,
Yeah.
just with all the ingredients, and the time that it took. But yeah, I feel pretty fortunate, like I said earlier, tonight, like to have you and BC and all the Mead community. I mean, granted, I'm not like in any of the forums very much, but your guys' videos have been crucial to like all the stuff that we do. So
Well, I think I can speak for him too. I think we appreciate hearing that, especially because sometimes YouTube commenters are not always the kindest people if you scroll through, and so there's some moments where you try really hard at something and people still have grief. So that's just how life is, unfortunately. But I appreciate that, and we're always gonna, I don't want to say always gonna be making content, because there'll be a day, but for now we're gonna be here for as much time as we can. So
right.
okay, I want to ask you about you guys. From what I gather, your recipe and flavor development and stuff is kind of inspired by, sounds like, your family and maybe things that you've tried around you. Is there any sort of intrigue into like styles of mead? Is there any sort of style that you've like always wanted to dive into that you just haven't quite got there yet?
Yeah, I know for me, I don't know if you have any, but for me, early on, it was just like, how much alcohol can I cram in this? Like how boozy can I make this? And that I still have that hankering once in a while to just make a bomb of a mead. But I think as my tastes have changed over the years, I kind of want to get more into like the hydromel, lower ABV session. I think that's the right term, session mead. Just because I feel like there's a lot that can be done with that, and we've made a few that have all been fairly enjoyable.
Oh yeah.
And you sent a handful, which I can't wait to try those out. But for me, that's kind of what I've been interested in lately.
I've been intrigued by using flowers, and so we've done like a lavender, rose petal.
We did
hibiscus. We've done 2 hibiscus, and they're so good.
Yeah.
So delicious. I had a hibiscus beer, and it didn't taste anything like that, but
interesting.
This beer was a specialty item for breast cancer awareness, and it was years ago, and so I don't even remember what it tasted like, but I just remember I love that taste of it. And so doing our 2 hibiscus meads was like, man, I want to dive even deeper into florals, and what, because so many people are either for or against floral tastes. It's you hate it or you love it.
The rose petal, that was terrible.
That was bad.
It's like perfume.
I need to mix it with something else, because it was total perfume.
Smelled like grandma.
Smelled great. Tasted, yeah. But I think there's just something about floral scents that they're so tricky, and that makes me want to do them more.
Well, they're kind of nostalgic too. Like you said, grandma, to talk about rose. It's like everybody's grandma or mom or somebody at some point has, like, you walked in their house and it smells like that lavender or whatever, or they have that lavender soap. And so I have that sort of feeling, because we tried to make a lavender, rose, and vanilla mead for this big mead project that was including a bunch of YouTubers. Not a good combo. There's from this get-go, that's just not too much floral going on. And so it was not very good, just to be clear. If I haven't made myself clear by my guttural reaction. But the thing is, it's like nostalgia plays so much into flavors for people. Especially like aromas, and it's hard to get that out of your head. It was really hard for me to get that out of my head as I'm tasting this lavender and vanilla and rose mead, to not think about grandma's house and then washing my hands, or saying a bad word and get my mouth soaped with that lavender soap. Like, there's just too many PTSDs going on there. So it's
That's
hard to do that.
Yeah, I think that kind of gets to my fascination with, like they say, smell is one of the most powerful memory. It can take you back in time. Everybody has that. If I smell corn on the cob, I'm immediately taken back to like my grandma's house growing up. She can make it all the time. And I think and being able to capture that, we've had one of our friends, Danielle, there's been multiple times where she's tried our meat and she's just like, oh my God, this reminds me of this super specific situation that I haven't thought about in over a decade. I'm like, that's cool. We can do that for you. I mean, clearly we weren't there, but something we did brought that back. Yeah. So it's cool to be able to do that, I think.
Yeah.
It is. That happened with that banana cream pie mead. I took it to BC and he helped me with the tasting. He's like, man, I feel like I'm like at my grandma's house and we're going and we're, walking in and I just got a piece of that pie. And so it's really cool to be able to do that. It's really hard to as well.
Right.
But nostalgia is so fun to play into. And I do think that, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, as far as like tasting, you get better at tasting things whenever you are familiar with it. Obviously, if you know what that banana cream pie tastes like itself, like you can make a better product. But then also, if you're sitting with people, like you're taking your meads to friends and then hearing them talk about stuff, because I feel like there's such a valuable resource in hearing someone say, oh, I really get this whatever leather profile from this brew. And you might have never thought about leather coming from this thing, but then suddenly your brain's going, oh yeah, they're right. Like I never knew that was there, but it's just like identifying. And then hopefully through that process, you're able to further taste that and say like, oh man, now I see this in things. It's a little bit deceptive. Part of my brain goes, has this person created something that's true? or have they just like said something and I'm just running with it? But I do feel like there's like a good amount of perception and experience that comes from listening to other people. So when you take your stuff to your friends, do you feel like you have a good crew of like people who just enjoy the booze and they're just there for the good time, and then maybe a couple friends that are like, okay, I'll give you real feedback, I'll let you know what I actually think? Do you have a mix, or is it one-sided?
Probably got a mix of both categories.
It's a mix. There's some people who repeatedly will forget that we're actually tasting it to improve ourselves, and so they'll just gulp it down.
Which is cool. Like,
it's nice, but then there's I would say our main core group of friends though. They're all really big into cooking, really big into doing mixed drinks, and trying different flavors and profiles. And oh my gosh, every dinner we have with them has a certain theme that we all follow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So
we're always trying to like impress each other.
Oh, yeah.
That's
But
cool.
we're also at the point now where like we're okay with potentially insulting somebody or like giving constructive feedback and not worrying so much about their feelings.
Right.
And that crew, that group of friends has been like pretty
they've been very
awesome
beneficial,
for the feedback.
There's so many times too that we'll have a mead that we taste with them and they'll say, oh, this would be good with this certain type of mead.
Pairings, that's another thing that we're in.
This would be good mixed with this other alcohol or this type to make a mixed drink. It's so interesting getting their feedback too.
Like mead cocktails have become a bigger thing with that group, which is kind of fun.
That's kind of fun. I've never really done that, but I always hear about it and people always say like, I hear more people say, I want to do this, and then nobody ever really does it. So to hear somebody actually being like, yeah, we mixed some traditional mead with a mojito and it turned out really good. Like that's just kind of a cool thing to actually do. Something I want to do eventually.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, like I said earlier, like if you told me to make an old fashioned or something, I'd be like, let me consult Google. So usually we're just looking at what do we have available and then pouring it.
Yeah.
Is that good? Oh, no, a little more of this. So it's a cocktail, but it's not like
Oh,
you can't find it on a menu. We're just
Yeah.
throwing it together.
Yeah. And there are some of those people that have the gardens, the herb gardens.
Yeah.
So they'll have like, oh, this needs spearmint, or oh, this needs some basil or whatever. Like they just run out and they'll pluck it and they'll put it in and they'll muddle it up a little bit and taste it, and they're like, oh, it's perfect. You gotta try it.
So yeah, that might be another piece of advice to give to people is have close friends that aren't afraid to give you feedback, like real feedback.
Yeah.
You'll definitely get better quicker that way.
And I'm sure you've seen this too. I have a lot of friends. I love my friends. They're great people, most of them. And they are not always the best at giving feedback. A lot of those guys and girls just want to drink some booze, you know, and I love that too. I want to be able to provide the experience, provide the party, so to speak, for people. But there's moments where I'm like, hey, I'm trying to develop this thing, you know, and what do you think? And they're like, oh, it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can you give me something? Maybe not always bad, but just like give me a little bit of feedback. And it's hard to find those friends sometimes, though. It's also hard to find people who have a developed palate.
Right.
Like we spend so much time in sensory land, tasting things and like being critical of what we're doing. Not everybody's like that. You know, they're just like there to enjoy whatever's been curated in front of them.
Exactly. Yeah, we're pretty fortunate in that regard. We're always, every time we get together, we're bringing at least 2 or 3 meads over and be like, hey, try this, you know, think about it for a few minutes. And it just becomes like a talking, you know, point, or, you know, a chat, your discussion about like, oh, it'd be really good. Like you said, it'd be good for this, for this or that. So yeah, good friends with constructive criticism. That's a solid thing.
So on that topic of advice, you guys are obviously experienced mead makers. You've had your heartaches, you've had your successes. Are there any bits and pieces of advice alongside what you just said that you'd give to somebody who's just getting started, or somebody who's maybe wanting to enter the competition sphere? Because you guys are obviously well versed in that with lots of great success. What are some pieces of advice you'd give to those people?
Do you have any?
I do. I know everyone will tell you to have fun with it, but make sure you try to choose different, I don't want to say recipes, but different tasting profiles that really just make you overjoyed and delighted to taste and try and smell. Like just try to find those things that really, you know, get you excited for it. Because if you're just starting on a traditional and you're bored with it, you're not going to get very far with wanting to improve it. And so just make sure you're having, you know, I don't know, what am I trying to say?
I don't know. I was writing notes for myself.
Just trying to find something that you think you would really like.
Yeah. I think for me, while she was talking, I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, I was writing notes. I would recommend. First and foremost is if you're watching this video now and you're interested in making mead, pause this video, open a new tab, and go back to the very first videos that Garrett and BC started doing like years ago, because that's where we learned what we're doing. You know, go support their channels, branch out, support other you know, mead making channels and communities. So yeah, first and foremost is just always be a sponge. You know, like in martial arts, you know, there's the thing like you may be a black belt, but you want to go into the dojo with a white belt mentality. Like everybody's always a student. You can always learn something new. And that's where we started, was with you guys and your content. The other thing, I guess advice is be a stickler with sanitization. All of our heartbreaks, as you said, they were usually a result of something that we overlooked. Like we didn't dunk this, or we didn't sanitize this properly. Thankfully, those have only been like maybe 2 or 3 in the years that we've been doing it, but it always sucks when it happens. So yeah, being being a stickler on keeping things clean and sanitary. I mean, I'm to the point now where like if I dip something once, I'm not going to dip it again until I go sanitize it. You know,
Mhm.
it would suck to ruin a batch just for one little thing.
Mhm.
Ingredients, as we've harped on, the better quality and quality out. That's essentially what
Yep.
that boils down to. And yeah, just experiment and have fun with it. Trying to think of anything else. Those are my main ones. Just always be a sponge. Try to, and we're kind of guilty of that. Like I said, for the past 6 months, it's been kind of hard to peel time away to make mead.
Yeah.
But I still continue to watch pretty much all of your guys' videos
Yeah.
that you guys put out, and it's fun to see what you guys are doing and what you've learned and what mistakes you've made that you're gracious enough to share. So
Yeah.
I
would
yeah.
add just briefly too, and he already kind of covered this, but with being a sponge, but be willing to collaborate, even if somebody's not doing mead per se. Be willing to collaborate with them on different styles, flavors, and opening up your own creativity to somebody else's, because they're going to think of something that you may never have thought of,
Mm-hmm.
and you may like it better.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned, some bad batches in the past too. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't always think about is like we look at competitions and you look at people's entries that do really well. It's easy to assume that everything that we make is a winner or everything we make is going to medal. So I guess my question is, what percentage of the things you've made do you feel like you've submitted to competitions at this point? Maybe not necessarily medaled, but submitted to competitions.
I could pull up my spreadsheet. We've made probably a total of around 70 or 80 meads over the course of 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, compared to like you guys, I'm sure the number of different meads we've made is pretty low. But I just attribute our success, like I said earlier, to the fact that we watch as much content as possible online to try to learn from what worked and what didn't work. But yeah, I think we've made probably about 70 or 80 batches so far.
And then yeah, how many we've submitted to competition?
I
don't actually know.
I would say maybe like I would say between 12 and 15 maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, and they've all done fairly well.
Yeah, I mean
we've sent a few ones that we were just like, this is pretty terrible. We need somebody else to tell us how to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I view it kind of like musical artists. If you go to ask a regular musical artist that is published, that is doing well, hey, what percentage of your songs are actually published or actually out there on the radio? And it's probably like 10%, because in truth, like, we make so much stuff as musicians and artists and that stuff, that the world will only see 10% of that or 15%. Same thing as bead makers. We're making a lot of stuff, unless you're someone like me who publishes everything they do, which I don't always recommend that. But like, we only will display a portion of those things. And I want people to hear that, because it is really discouraging sometimes whenever you submit to competitions. And I know there's a lot of developing mead makers who are wanting to do well. Everybody submits to a competition, whether they want to accept it or not, to hopefully get a medal. There's always the goal. I want to get some good feedback. Everybody should want that. But I think deep down, we all want to do well. We all want to have some sort of payoff in the end that says like, hey, good job. So hearing that you guys are making all this stuff, and, not everything is going to be a medal winner, or it could just be situational, and that, that competition could have been stacked with, the 12 best mead makers in the whole United States decided to all enter that one. So don't be discouraged if you submit to a competition and you don't get the results that you want, because it can be disheartening to think like, oh, I only had 4 bottles left of this thing and I gave 3 away and I have 1 left now and I'll never be able to have this thing. It's always about making more and then trying again. And I love that you guys have the spirit of developing recipes. I feel like that's something we don't always do. It's really easy. I think you also said this earlier, just to throw things together and just say like kind of Hail Mary the mead together and say like, what's going to happen? But to really sit down and say like, I want to make this the best thing possible. So I'm going to do some testing and recipe development. While it's a grueling effort, it will lead you to a better result and hopefully be more enticing for friends to be more involved with mead making or ask for your mead more often. Because I think we also want that. We want our friends to be like, hey, give me more of that mead.
Right.
It's fun. It's a good feeling.
I think on your note of like competitions and stuff, for us, it's always been, we've been pretty fortunate that like usually our first batch is pretty solid enough that we feel confident that we want to spend the money to put it in a competition, because they can get expensive, depending on how many you do. But that another comment that I have about competitions is send them to different places, because they've talked about it in various other podcasts where like people's palate, like one region's palate is going to be different than another region's palate. We sent, I think, that mango habanero to, I can't remember the competition, but it did pretty, it probably got like a high 20s, low 30s. And then in Mead Stampede, it got like 42 or something.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show that like, not every competition is going to give you the same result, but you can kind of collate and compile those results and really kind of see what other people are saying.
Yeah, that's definitely true, because there have been lots of moments where like I've had that similar situation. I've sent something off and it's people loved it one place and then made positive comments or whatever about it, and then the next place a week later said total opposite and they scored it a certain way, and then my brain's going, what the heck, did I like bottle the right thing? Like I don't know what happened here. So that's also part of it, is don't rely on just one group of people giving you feedback. If you only give your stuff to one friend and they hate it, that doesn't mean it's bad necessarily. It just means that one friend might not have liked it. And so, give it to more people.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, well, the fun thing about our experience tonight is that we're not quite done with our videos. So we're kind of reached to the end of the podcast, and I'm going to go ahead and help people usher them to the next thing that they're going to see. So Nathan and Karysa and I are going to get to do some tasting of a mead that I've sent them. And then we have an extra thing, a little bonus content thing that they know nothing about, which is the best, most diabolical part of this little moment here. It's going to be quite fun. So if you want to check out those videos, this is on the Man-Made Mead Extras channel. Those will be on the main channel. I'm kind of pushing things around. But I really appreciate you guys' time, and I hope that people who've listened have picked up some advice and just feel more inspired to continue to brew, continue to make mead, continue to make mistakes, and then, I'll hopefully get some successes in there as well. So thank you guys for your time, and I have no doubt that I will be seeing and tasting some of your meads in the future with Mead Stampede and maybe other competitions if I get to go to those.
Right on. Well, hey, thanks again, Garrett, for having us. It's always good to see you and chat with you about mead, and we wish you all the best.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Well, guys, hop on over to the other channel and check out our exciting tastings, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.